Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, dear colleagues, friends, and attendees. On behalf of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, I want to welcome all of you to the 2023 virtual conference. It's a pleasure to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. At this conference, there are around 350 participants from 35 countries. We are delighted that many of you have come to share practice, studies, and reflections. You have the opportunity to participate in a full and interesting schedules of keynotes, concurrent sessions, panel sessions, on-demand sessions, and other events, all focus on enriching your knowledge and experience of the world of gifted learners. I believe this international network is essential for the future of gifted education. The theme for this conference, Excellence Without Borders, Gifted Education in a Changing World, goes in this direction. It highlights how important it is to advocate for gifted children worldwide, to support children from different backgrounds. As stated by my friend Del Siegel from the University of Connecticut, all children have the right to learn something new every day. They also have the right to develop their talents either in the southern or northern hemisphere, in the west or east part of the planet. All of them should be welcome and supported. I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to John Freeman, an international renowned researcher in the field of gifted, who passed away last month. She was the founding president of the European Council for High Ability, the author of many books, chapters, and papers on giftedness, a passionate advocate for the rights of the gifted, a true source of inspiration for many of us. She will be missed. This conference could not happen without the tireless work of so many people. My gratitude to the members of the academic committee for kindly accept to evaluate several proposals. Many thanks to the members of the executive committee, to our executive administrator, Tyler Clark, and to the team of the SpotMe platform. We have worked hard to make this conference a success. Serving for 2 years as president of the World Council for Gifted Children, I'd like to express my gratitude to the members and delegates for all the support I have received from them. That makes all the difference in my mission as president. Thank you. Dear members and attendees, thank you for attending the 2023 virtual conference of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. I hope that all of you will find this conference useful, enjoyable, and productive. Welcome to the 2023 virtual conference of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. Now, I'd like to introduce Dr. Tyler Clark, the Executive Administrator of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. Good evening. Welcome, Tyler.
Thank you, Denise. Kia ora, bonjour, zdravo, hola, merhaba, hello. Welcome to the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children 2023 Virtual World Conference. We're happy to have you take part in the second Virtual World Conference and look forward to learning with you over the next few days. It is my honor to introduce our opening keynote speaker, Dr. Julia Link Roberts. Dr. Roberts is the McEwen Professor of Gifted Studies at Western Kentucky University. She is the Executive Director of the Center for Gifted Studies and the Carol Martin Gatton Academy of Mathematics and Science in Kentucky. Dr. Roberts is past president of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children and a board member of the Association for the Gifted, a division of the Council for Exceptional Children, and the Kentucky Association for Gifted Education. Dr. Roberts directs summer and Saturday programming for children and young people. She also teaches graduate classes in gifted education and talent development. Dr. Roberts has been a mentor to so many people over the years, including me. I first met Dr. Roberts when I attended the inaugural class of the Gatton Academy that I mentioned she was the founding director of. She sparked my interest in gifted education and has helped with the work that I do today. Please welcome Dr. Roberts to the stage to share her reflections on gifted education and talent development, then, now, and looking forward.
Welcome to the World Conference on Gifted and Talented Children. I am honored to present this keynote at the 25th World Conference, a keynote that will focus on reflections on gifted education and talent development, then, in the past, now, the present, and looking forward. My comments will provide reflections on my journey throughout my career with the World Council, the story of the World Council, and general reflections on gifted education and talent development over the almost 5 decades that there has been a World Council. My comments on gifted education reflect what is generally known and or practiced, being aware that gifted education is not the same in all countries or in all parts of a country. That is certainly true in the United States, as states differ greatly in what they mandate or do not mandate in regard to our children and young people with gifts and talents. The mission of the World Council is, quote, to focus world attention on gifted and talented children and ensure the realization of their valuable potential to the benefit of humankind. End of the statement. That, of course, remains an important mission on which all of us work on an ongoing basis. Myths about children and young people with gifts and talents remain alive and well, much to our chagrin. Those myths seem to be something we must work on almost on an ongoing basis, as we have new people in schools who don't know it. We have new parents, we have new educators, and for each of them, there may be some mythology that's pretty prevalent for them. Got to get rid of that. In 1987, my involvement with the World Council began when I flew back from England, where I was traveling with high school students, and I flew back to attend the World Conference in Salt Lake City. Since that time, 3.5 decades ago, I have gone to a total of 17 World Conferences, including this one. I have seen the world as I participated in conferences in Adelaide and Sydney, Australia, Hong Kong, Toronto and Vancouver, Canada, Istanbul, Turkey, Odense, Denmark, The Hague in the Netherlands, Prague in the Czech Republic, and Salt Lake City, New Orleans, Nashville, and Louisville in the United States. Oh my goodness, and please remember, I thought I would never travel at all. It is so important that our organization represents the world rather than one country. Consequently, the executive committee must be made up of individuals from different countries. You just met Denise Blythe. She is from Brazil. Margaret Sutherland from Scotland. Tracy Riley from New Zealand. Eleanor Van Gerven from the Netherlands. Anis Harop from Lebanon. Moya Jurasevec from Slovenia. And Bronwyn McFarland from the United States. So think of that as people representing a variety of countries in various parts of the globe. I want everyone who's listening to know of the global nature of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. If I add my experience with the executive committee, I was elected in 2009 and served as treasurer part of that time. Then I was elected president, as Tyler mentioned, and served the 4-year term 2017 to 2021. Working to make the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children was indeed a highlight of my career in gifted education. Our work in this field is so very important. And please watch with me to see all of the cities in which world conferences have been held. Those locations certainly represent the global nature of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. Fun to look at all of it. And for those of you in the audience who have been to conferences before, isn't it really special to remember experiences you had, people you met, friends you made, colleagues with whom you have followed up since attending a world conference? So we're going to look at then and now with several different topics. The first one is technology. Perhaps the easiest way to compare what was, now is, and what is yet to come is to start with technology. Technology really consumes much of our everyday life today. When the World Council began, technology as we know it today didn't exist. There were phones, but no cell phones, as those days preceded the internet. Phone calls were not made as easily as today. Often the call had to be prearranged. However, by the conference in Hong Kong in 1995, things had begun to change. Probably we go no place anymore but what we see people with their cell phone in their hand or close by. So let's think back to the World Conference in Hong Kong. It was there that I became very well aware of the coming prevalence of cell phones. Dick, my husband, was with me at that conference, and the two of us went to the theater one night. And at the intermission, we saw a mother leaning out over a balcony holding an umbrella so that her two children could get a signal to use their cell phones. And what a funny picture that was to us. That was a novelty, as we knew about cell phones, but had yet to see so many of them. I believe we still had bag phones that were available in case we had car trouble when we were out and about. Today, we expect communication via technology to be as ongoing as a person-to-person conversation. Is that true for you where you are? Cell phones seem to be everywhere. The pandemic opened a new world of communication through Zoom and other similar ways of communicating. All of a sudden, it was the way to communicate, even when distance was not a challenge. Conferences were and are held virtually, just as we are tonight, starting our 25th World Conference. And classes have turned to virtual learning. The World Council can now offer professional learning opportunities any time of the year virtually, as the World Council did this year with webinars on creativity, twice exceptionality, and any other topic that we would want to offer in a webinar. Meetings of the executive committee are held virtually, although it is challenging to find times to meet that there isn't someone or someone's meeting in the middle of the night. Imagine with me how difficult communication was for the first executive committee. Members must have been either on the telephone or mail, not email. And being together was probably limited to every other year at the World Conference. Perhaps they met at other meetings throughout the 2-year time, but it was not easy like it was today. So what's yet to come with technology? Oh my, I hope you know. You do know, I hope, that I am not the great prognosticator with technology. When we think of what the future will be with technology, there are only guesses, and there are likely no limits for what the possibilities are. I wear a watch that provides health information, as well as information about weather forecasts, information about anything almost that I could think of. It certainly tells me how many steps I walk and how many times I stand up, kind of a silly thing sometimes. But if a watch that small contains that much information, what on earth will be the possibilities for technology in the future? I can even make a call using my watch. It's not very easy, by the way. It's not very handy. So if we look at technology of what it will be, AI has arrived, and we know the influences AI has on learning that are almost unimaginable to us today. The question that is front and center is, what is the moral compass for AI and its uses? That's something that seems to be very important. Folks are kind of scrambling to see what is it that will provide limits and that will let us focus the AI that's so powerful on important uses. We can now take our students on virtual tours of museums and locations around the world. We can see all of the art that is in the Louvre. We can virtually explore many things that before required our travel. Our students can visit with astronauts on real time and learn from experts on any topic. They can go almost any place virtually. And what a different world this is from the one in which many of us grew up. There is not a day that I don't get on my computer information about AI, ways that it's being used to scam people, ways that it's being used to innovate, ways that it's being used both appropriately and inappropriately. What will be the guardrails we have for students in their use of AI? That is yet to be determined. We know that technology provides tools that will make education more personal for students, thus making it possible to remove the learning ceiling for children and young people who are ready to learn more complex content at a different pace than classmates. We must take advantage of technology when it opens opportunities for our students to thrive both academically and socially and emotionally. Technology pervades the world in which we live, and we must be very careful with how it's used, but we certainly must welcome uses that allow for our students to thrive in school. Then and now with curriculum for gifted students. Speaking of curriculum and services for gifted students around the globe is challenging, as the definition of giftedness varies, and some people continue to keep the definition the same, while some are changing and allowing more options for children who are gifted and talented. We see the normal curve. An early definition of giftedness often focused on advanced ability as measured by an intelligence test. In many places, that way of looking at advanced ability continues to be the accepted practice. Elsewhere, giftedness is more focused on a talent area, perhaps on creativity, maybe on leadership, a specific academic area, or a visual and performing art. But look with me for a moment at the normal curve. Was doing a workshop today, and as we were trying to get the teachers to look at why it is that the needs of gifted and talented students are so different from other students, and to look at the normal curve and to look at 130 and up, and then to look at the other side of the curve that's looking from 70 on down. Those children are equal distance from the average. And yet, so many times as we're addressing the needs of students, we forget the exceptional needs that are there for the students who score at the upper end of the curve. Curriculum practice focus in many places on advanced content that provides challenge to learners and cognitive processes that promote problem solving and thinking at high levels. The Global Economic Council has issued the following list of important skills students everywhere need to be honing. And here we have the top job skills for 2023 as issued by the Global Economic Forum. Analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, motivation and self-awareness, curiosity, and lifelong learning. My, don't those sound familiar? Please note that these needed job skills are highly related to the skills that gifted education has promoted for decades: critical thinking and creative thinking. We have encouraged and provided environments that lead to creativity. Innovation is important in all of our economies. In fact, I would say that one of the big motivators that we can use in advocacy is that these children are ones who will be generating jobs, will be creating opportunities for others. And so economic development becomes an incredibly important topic for us to share when we're talking with decision makers. This listing of the top job skills for 2023, and remember, 2023 is over half over. It was released by the Global Economic Forum, and they sound so much like what we have championed in gifted education for decades, as well as currently. In addition to complex content and challenging cognitive skills, curriculum for gifted students highlights authentic products. These products have rubrics which allow students to make ongoing improvements in their thinking when they're considering doing another product that might be the same, as well as the production of their essays, works of art, videos, or other products. One of the things that we have come to understand very clearly is that many times we tap into the interest of students when we have options for products for them to complete to demonstrate what it is they've learned. Always, we can't offer options in classrooms, but sometimes it's possible. And it's then that we occasionally find a talent or that we didn't even know existed. Very important. So, what's yet to come with curriculum? Perhaps the use of technology will be the greatest determiner of what is yet to come with curriculum. Technology could help us make it a smooth process for educators to differentiate, to provide challenge for students. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Currently, educators need to plan for students or clusters of students to match their level of readiness when learning experiences must be created that offer challenge, but not too much challenge. We need to be challenged at a higher level than we're currently operating, but not so much challenge that it's frustrating. Without grouping students for instructional purposes, the range of readiness for students at all levels can stretch several grades above and below the grade being taught, making it difficult, if not impossible, to ensure that all students in the class are appropriately challenged. Or, as Denise mentioned in her welcome, Del Siegley's statement that every child needs to be learning every day in school. It is so important to have challenge so that all children are learning on an ongoing basis. So let's look at talent development. Talent development is not exactly a new conversation, although it has become the focus of research in various fields, including sports, music, art, and the various arts and sciences. In 2011, Drs. Paulo Oslewski-Kubilius, Rena Sabatnik, and Frank Worrell rocked the gifted education world in the United States with a paper outlining talent development and highlighting its attributes as the way to approach potentially gifted individuals. They wrote, and I quote, "Giftedness is the manifestation of performance or production that is clearly at the upper end of the distribution in a talent domain, even relative to that of other high-functioning individuals in that domain. Further, giftedness can be viewed as developmental, in that in the beginning stages, potential is the key variable. In later stages, achievement is the measure of giftedness. And in fully developed talents, eminence is the basis on which the label is granted." And that is a quote from Worrell, Sabatnik, and Oslewski-Kubilius. So we're looking at talent development in various areas. Much of the talent development research has been done in sports. What is important with talent development is recognizing potential and then giving opportunities to move along. Thinking of the Bloom research on eminence in talent development, there really were 3 stages for reaching eminence. The first is loving your content, your area of talent. The second is developing skill. And the third is finding a mentor who can take you to the level of eminence. We see that being researched in many arts and performing arts, and including the visual arts as well. Dance, for example, is an area in which eminence is developed in that trajectory that I just talked about. So talent development is a way of looking at giftedness with the end goal of reaching eminence. It requires us to think in many ways about what it is that is so important for our children who have exceptional talent, and those who can, with appropriate teaching and coaching, can reach the very highest level of their talent area. So what's yet to come with talent development? Well, the possibilities are endless. Talent development will continue to be a model to guide the education of children and young people as they continue to hone talents from their initial and developing interest to the sharpening of skills related to the talent area and the fine-tuning of the talents in order to reach a level of development that is exceptional, perhaps even eminent. In the future, more professionals will focus on talent development, engaging children and young people with exceptional aptitude in a talent domain. Celebrating small accomplishments often encourages children to continue in a talent domain. Small recognitions of talent can go such a long way in encouraging children to pursue a talent area. And we know that public performance is important in a talent area because practice to get to that next level is something that occurs as we prepare for performing. Talent development and gifted education share so much, and yet are very different in terms of providing approaches to gifted development of our children. Talent development will continue to be a model to guide the education of children and young people as they move along. So now let's look at what's been then and what is now in advocating for children and young people with gifts and talents. As stated earlier, myths about those with gifts and talents persist. Remember, the mission of the World Council is to focus world attention on gifted and talented children and ensure the realization of their valuable potential to the benefit of humankind. Wow, what an important mission that is, and what a huge message it is for us to follow. And I think that ties in so tightly with any talk we have about advocacy. We advocate for students. Teachers do that all the time. Researchers provide the basis for data that can help us advocate for individual students. We also advocate to establish policy, which we hope then will lead to legislation. As educators, researchers, and interested citizens, we need to advocate for students and also for policy and law. Through past conferences, the World Council has worked to bring together researchers, educators, and interested individuals to advance the knowledge and understanding of the needs of gifted students. Please remember that the greatest need for gifted students is created by their strengths, which make them different from their age mates. Gifted students need idea mates as well as age mates. They need students who want to share what they want to talk about. And those students may well not be of the same age as the children or young people involved. The Global Principles for Professional Learning and Gifted Education is a document created by members of the World Council, members from various countries. The hope is that the global principles will strengthen opportunities for gaining policy for challenging educational learning for children and young people with gifts and talents. It can be used as an advocacy tool. So as we look at the global principles for professional learning, there are some things that professional learning needs to be if it is to thrive. Content must be tiered. It must be evidence-based, holistic, comprehensive, and integral. That professional learning needs to be broad, equitable, ongoing, sustainable, empowering. Each of those areas needs to be remembered and emphasized. And I hope that each of you will go to the World Council website to look at the global principles for professional learning and gifted education, unless you have a copy that's in your bookshelf. And if so, get it out, use it, make it be what the intent was for it to influence what will happen in the future for gifted and talented children. The hope is that the global principles will strengthen opportunities for gaining policy for challenging learning opportunities for children and young people with gifts and talents. And I want to take this occasion to thank each of you out there who contributed in the development of this document. It's something about which we are very happy to have because we think it makes a difference. And remember, that's what the World Council is all about, making a difference for children and young people with gifts and talents. So what's yet to come with advocacy? What can we expect? One thing is we need to continue as advocates who address the needs. Remember, those are the strengths of advanced children and young people. We can't stop. It must be something we do on an ongoing basis. Secondly, we need for more personalized education that does not need to be specifically for individual learners, but it could be for clusters of learners who have a similar level of readiness. And that if we cluster group, then it makes it easier for educators to plan, but it also makes it nice for the young people to work with others as long as they can be appropriately challenged. This is a picture of the governor of Kentucky, Governor Beshear, as he greeted children on the day we have in our Capitol, where we recognize Gifted Education Month. And for us, that's the month of February. Recognition is so important in the advocacy journey. Remember, talent can be developed. Children will rise to expectations when schools provide a continuum of advanced learning opportunities for a broader set of students, beginning in elementary school and continuing through middle and high school. Advocacy matters. It matters for individual students as we advocate in a classroom or a school district or whatever you call your divisions for learning. It matters as we meet with decision makers at the local level, at the state or country level, in order to ensure that the needs of our advanced learners are considered when they make policy, that they are paid attention to when legislation is made. Advocacy matters. It is so important to speak out. So then and now, let's look at best practices in gifted education. What are best practices to ensure that advanced students are learning every day in school? Grade level learning is admirable, but not if the students have met or exceeded that level of learning. 4 practices provide the platform that opens the possibilities for advanced learning. Grouping for instructional purposes is one, acceleration, another, enrichment, and differentiation. So let's start with grouping for instructional purposes. I mentioned earlier how challenging it is for a teacher to have the wide range of learners in a heterogeneous class. So let's look at it specifically. A 4th or 5th grade classroom in which students are heterogeneously grouped might have a range of reading or math levels that is very wide, probably stretching 3 to 4 levels below the grade and 4 to 6 levels above. Planning lessons to engage 4th or 5th grade learners would miss the mark when many of them, unless students were grouped for instructional purposes and learning experiences were matched to their level of readiness. So let's look at enrichment. Enrichment is a word that we have used for a long, long time. What it offers for students are opportunities that go beyond what would be regularly occurring in a classroom, or opportunities that are offered within a school or perhaps outside the school. Enrichment opportunities for gifted students are ones that provide additional opportunities to address the needs that they have because of interest, because of their quick learning ability. For example, we do summer programming for gifted students. I love these times when young people come. And in a 3-week course in physics, 6 hours a day with an hour of study hall at night, and that may not sound like fun to you, but the kids love it and count the days to come back. So in this physics class for 3 weeks, those students have at least 3/4 of a year of what's taught in a physics class, maybe even more, because the students have the ability and the interest. So that's enrichment for them. It's allowing them to do something they want to do and something they want to learn about. And when you tie interest and ability, it's almost unlimited as to what the students can do. Acceleration is another practice that I know is available across the globe. In fact, Dr. America Gross from Australia was one of the people who came to our state, and at a time that I thought acceleration might never be talked about again, she talked about accelerating students, and the conversation opened up and it became something we did talk about again. So acceleration, if you look at A Nation Deceived, which is printed in many different languages, there are more than 20 types of acceleration. So a best practice for gifted and talented children is making sure that acceleration options are matched with the needs that are demonstrated by that student or group of students. Acceleration has an incredibly rich, robust research base. And it is so important as we advocate for us to share the research that is so resoundingly positive about acceleration practices. So I've mentioned grouping for instructional purposes, enrichment, acceleration, and differentiation is the fourth of those that I'll talk about. Differentiation becomes a strategy for planning and implementing learning experiences, a strategy that allows children to continue learning. Differentiation, of course, must be more than different. Rather, differentiation must be anchored in pre-assessment information that relates to the planning that was done for that particular activity or learning unit. What's yet to come with best practices? As I pull together reflections on best practices, it is very important for us to think that continuing to refine curriculum planning to match the needs of the students is incredibly important. It is something that educators and teacher educators are working with all the time. The principles for professional learning relate so tightly to best practices and what it is that must be available to students in our classrooms all around the globe. So as I pull together reflections on the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children, my journey with the World Council has really been over much of my career. It is very important for all of us to think about key information that relates to gifted education and talent development, and for us to take time to reflect on what we know and what we think is yet to come. The World Council for Gifted and Talented Children continues to represent countries around the globe. We heard tonight that we have 30-some countries represented at this World Conference. Various countries are represented on the executive committee in the work in which we engage, for example, the global principles for professional learning in gifted education. And it's certainly reflected in the conferences and locations for those conferences. Thank you. I so appreciate the opportunity to share reflections on then, now, and what is yet to come. I wish you wonderful sharing and learning at the 25th World Conference of the World Council for Gifted and Talented Children. And I certainly would be happy to address questions that you have.
Thank you for that keynote, Julia. I saw some people in the chat thanking you for sharing some of the history of the World Council and bringing back their memories of the history and some of the earlier conferences. They enjoyed reflecting on that. I am going to start out with the question, and if you all have other questions for Dr. Roberts, please put those in the chat so that I can ask her. Ann Robinson has asked, in what ways do you see creativity included in talent development and advanced education models?
Well, Ann, I think it's incredibly important. And in work that I do, I encourage folks to always make creativity one of the expectations with various products that students create. I think creativity is something that we've got to talk about. Otherwise, and we need to expect it. Otherwise, we will find that students don't take the time to be creative if we don't expect it and recognize it. I think that it is incredibly interesting when we take the time to include, and I'm going to use an example of something that Tracy Inman and I have done on the DAP tool. When you are reflecting on what you are doing and what you're expecting the product to be, we have one of our 4 areas of concentration: creativity, what's creative in the product, and what's creative in the content that you're showing. We've got to ask students to do that. Otherwise, it pretty much doesn't happen. So I guess being intentional with our expectations about creativity is very important.
So Michelle from Australia mentioned that acceleration is quite misunderstood in Australia and the many, many different forms it takes. I think that you could probably put in a number of different countries instead of Australia. And I remember we were talking after the pandemic and we were excited to hear people talking about acceleration, only to find out that their understanding of acceleration was to try to catch up from the lag that had been caused with loss of learning. How do we make sure that we're using the term acceleration in a way that people understand what we mean and that they are maybe buying into it and that we're sending a clear message?
Oh my, how important that question is. And you are so right. To just see the word accelerate makes me think, oh boy, it's going in the right direction. It may not be intended that way at all. I think the only thing we can do is continue to educate people and to share with them the robust research that's available in that particular area. I happen to think that within the last decade plus a bit, the research that's been shared on acceleration is one of the most important milestones that we've had. And so we can certainly go to a compilation of the research in the work that's been done by the Acceleration Institute at the University of Iowa. And because it has been published in multiple languages, it is accessible.
So we have a question here. You mentioned in several places during your keynote that grouping for instructional purposes is very important. Is mixed ability grouping supported at all by research? Is within class clustering in mixed ability classes as effective as ability grouping? Can you share your thoughts on grouping and what you think is best?
I certainly will. I would tell you that I think a teacher of, I mentioned 4th or 5th grade, it could be 7th grade, or could be whatever grade you're talking about. If you have the full range of ability and of readiness in that class, the teacher has an impossible job. Impossible to see that every child is learning every day. And so looking at the total school cluster model, I think is a wonderful way to look at doing it. You narrow the range and make it possible for a teacher to have a couple of areas of ability, but not the full range of ability within the classroom. I am unaware of research that supports a mixed ability classroom. And I don't think it has to be homogeneous, but I just think you've got to restrict the range so that the teacher has a fair chance to plan instruction that would allow everyone to be learning.
So you talked about gifted education varying in different countries. How alike are gifted education practices in various parts of the globe, do you think?
I think that one of the things I thought I might do before, when I was first asked to make this presentation, was that I would do a little bit of a survey. And then I realized how unrealistic that was, because if you were to survey in the United States, it would be very different which part, even which role group within which state you were surveying. So I think that what we have alike in countries across the United States is that we're looking at students who are capable of using their advanced abilities to learn complex content at a more rapid pace and to think more frequently at higher levels. I think beyond that, it's probably pretty hit and miss what you would find in various countries. And I think that generalizing gets us in trouble.
Bronwyn has asked, what is your advice for effective and regular advocacy strategies at the local and regional or state levels? I know that advocacy is a big passion of yours. So what are some advice you have?
I think it's something that must be on your mind all the time, and you must be ready to talk about it. I think each of us needs to have an elevator speech that is highlighting advocacy in your school district or in your state. And you must be informed enough to know what's current and what you need to be asking for. I think that relationships are what's really important. And they say in real estate, it's location. In advocacy, it is absolutely relationships. You need to know the people who will make the decision that's important to you. And I think that we need to be talking with other parents, because when times are challenging, if parents don't know what's going on, they certainly aren't going to step up to the plate to advocate. So speak out. Know your representatives or whoever makes the decision. Make sure that a local school board knows about what you're interested in and what are best practices for gifted kids.
So I have two questions here that kind of relate to one another. Phoebe said it's easy for schools to create a lot of after-school extracurricular activities for gifted students. Do you have advice on how to strike the balance between curricular and extracurricular enrichment? And then along with that, Penina has said, have you found enrichment, acceleration, and other extension type practices used more loosely than with deliberate planning? She said that she's found that it's been used more so than extension in my experience.
That's a lot of questions. I may have to ask about the second part of that. I would tell you that services in Kentucky for gifted students must be offered within the school day. And anything offered beyond that is extracurricular. And I would think that probably is fairly good advice for anyone, because it is not fair to not make the adaptations and provide the services that are needed for students when they're in class a long time each day. I do think a rich array of extracurricular activities extends into an interest area that the student is very interested in. And so it's very important to have lots of clubs, lots of engaging interests. I think the very last part of that question was related to the fact that the loosely organized or related activities sometimes don't really have the punch that they would if they were planned carefully and implemented that way. I do think that can happen, but once again, that all depends on the leadership. And it depends on how important those activities are within the school, if they are school-related extracurricular activities. But I do want to say that for the development of talent, lots of the services will be offered beyond the school. They'll be offered in lessons. They'll be offered by universities. They'll be offered in an array of by an array of organizations, all of which could have very tightly planned and well implemented opportunities. But it isn't always that way.
Julia, in what ways can individuals influence best practices in schools and schools of teacher education?
Well, I think that there are lots of ways for us to do that. But once again, it must be intentional. You have to be trying to do that. And you must know best practices in order to get your school leaders interested in implementing them within the school. It is very easy for us in gifted ed to talk with others in gifted ed, but it is so important for us to be interacting and communicating with different role groups. Whoever the leader of your school district is, who are the leaders within your schools, who are the people making the decisions for your school corporation or district or whatever you happen to call it. It is incredibly important to know who those people are, when decisions that you might be hoping will be made, when will it be made, and by whom, and who are the influencers who are in those groups. Influencers, kind of a newer word for us to use, but who are the people who make a difference? Who are the people, if they aren't for it, it won't happen. And we need to be smart about our advocacy, because otherwise we lose. Gifted kids lose.
I have one more question that I'll ask. You have served on the executive committee in several different capacities, as treasurer, as president. You've worked with the headquarters here on our campus. So you definitely know the importance of promoting the World Council to other people. How do you think that members that are watching today should promote the World Council, and why do you think it's important that the World Council continue our mission?
I love your question because I do think the World Council is very important. And I think that if we don't talk to people about it, if others don't know it exists, if they don't know the purposes, it won't have any influence in those countries. It is incredibly important for us to support people in other countries as they try to address the needs of gifted children, just as it is those children that are close to us in whatever locality in which we might live. The World Council is an extremely important organization, and it will stay strong as long as its membership is actively involved. So talk to others about how important the World Council is and encourage others to check out the website, to learn about what we do, to learn about the journals and the journal and the newsletter, and to get involved with the webinars that we can now do, and then come to the next World Council, wherever it will be.
Well, thank you, Julia, for sharing your insights on the past, the present, and the future of gifted education. I see a comment here in the chat that I think exemplifies what a lot of people think. Pam Klinkenbeard said, Julia, thank you for your long-term unflagging advocacy for gifted students and for being an inspirational model for other advocates. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
And this concludes our keynote session. There will be 15 minutes before the next sessions. Make sure you go into the agenda on the left side of the platform, and you can pick from 3 upcoming live concurrent sessions. See you there.